I do agree on the autism and ADHD thing. I don't think vaccines cause autism. I think modern society causes autism. It's not a chemical thing. Autism is just what happens to your brain when you have no friends, don't go outside, you watch cartoons all day. One of the cartoons you watch is My Little Pony's Friendship is Magic. You go into Google that at 12 and find pornography of it. Your brain chemistry is instantly rewired, and the rest of your life is spent drawing like increasingly graphic imitations of the stuff that you saw that imprinted onto your mind when you were a child. I think that autism is caused by like environmental factors. I think people should probably like engage a little bit more socially, I feel. It's probably good. Same with ADHD. Dude, everyone has ADHD now. You notice that? Like people who think this, read Foucault, okay? But not too closely because he was French. Like everyone has ADHD now. It's the environment. Everyone's got smartphones. It's true. The idea that like, oh, your brain chemistry and the way you respond to environmental stimuli is just hard written into the code of your brain and can't be changed, so there's no way for an autistic person to become unautistic or an unautistic person to become autistic. That's bullshit. Why does anyone think that's true? Your brain is literally a machine that's designed to change in response to environmental stimuli. And then people are like, well, no, actually, the only way you can get ADHD is if you're born with the wiring in a given way, and then that's it, and it's always that way. Like, no, of course not. But it's not vaccines that do it. Why the fuck would vaccines do it? Are you claiming there's a cure for autism? Yeah, going outside. Sometimes. It's an exacerbation of a normal variation in human brain chemistry. Yeah. Wait, is he joking? Read Foucault. You are too bought in on the medicalization of the human mind, that everything's categorized and in separate boxes or whatever. ADHD is 100% genetic. Brain structure is genetic. The brain is complicated. Everyone is like a complex tapestry, a set of sliders and a million different variables. ADHD, autism, basically every condition that you can get, they're all just like exacerbations of existing variants. And that variance can change over your life. Of course it can. This is factual. We understand this physically, right? Some people might have a physical propensity for building a lot of, say, muscle on their shoulders, you know? Like some people are born and they just have strong shoulders. Like that's just genetics. Other people are born with weaker shoulders. But we don't categorize people in like, sorry, you're a weak shoulder kin and a strong shoulder kin, and there's no way for one to become the other. A person with weak shoulders can work out, and some of them can end up getting shoulders that would, be the envy of people who are born with strong shoulders. And there are people who are born with strong shoulders that can let that shit atrophy and their shoulders get weak. ADHD is 80 to 90% genetic. Wait till you find out what fat and muscle distribution are. Sorry, I'm right. You're wrong. Goodbye. It's not vaccines.
To integrate nutrition-based interventions into our healthcare programs like Medicaid and Medicare.
I'm sorry, wait. Autistic and ADHD brains are literally shaped different. You're actually cooked. All brains are shaped different. You're talking about like a wide set of characteristics. You're talking about averages. Unironically, you guys talk about neuroatypicality the way transphobes talk about sex. Men have no fat tissue on their breast. Women do. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And there are a variety of chemical and environmental stimuli that can change that in one direction or the other. No, they're different. You're not a doctor? You're right. Unlike doctors, I've gotten my my medical information on the subject from sources more recent than like the 1970s. Chad is always wrong. Never forget. In clinical psychology, there's a model called the biopsychosocial model, and it's basically the most applicable model for every disorder. Chad still hasn't caught on to the fact that the diagnosis criteria for all of these conditions is meeting social checkboxes. They're like, no, man, they're like innate, super ultra intrinsic characteristics. Never mind the fact the way they're diagnosed is by like determining whether or not it influences your life, which is a social and subjective criteria set. No. Can I have an example of how sensory processing issues can be created by environment? Yeah, easily. If you don't go outside very often, you're less used to sensory processing. That's the easiest thing in the world. Yeah, if you go outside often and you expose yourself to lots of new things, then you're a lot more used to that. And if you don't, you're not. That's literally true. That manifests physically. So you're saying autism is just a skill issue? I'm saying life is a skill issue, okay? Don't be stupid. But autistic people can't really overcome that normally. I genuinely, you're gonna make me side with RFK Jr. It's you go from like basically no one in society having autism to like 1 in 5 of you mother having autism or ADHD, and people are like, no, it's just genetically it went up or something. I don't know. The scientists haven't figured it out yet. There was a genetic bottleneck, and suddenly everyone got ADHD. Dude, come on. We're able to diagnose it now? No, that's not actually the consensus on the issue. It does seem like people are getting it more. More people are meeting the criteria. Do you not okay, literally go over the diagnosis criteria for ADHD. Go over it, like look at it, the boxes you have to check, and ask yourself, is it possible that there are any changes in society that might make more people meet these criteria? And if yes, why are you arguing with me? Internet access IMO? True. Symptoms of inattention have to be present for at least 6 months. Symptoms, here we go. DSM-5 criteria for ADHD diagnosis. Let's see if any of these could possibly be altered due to environmental stimuli. Vosh, read a scientific paper, challenge impossible. Listen, you can be smug or correct. I'm sorry, you can be smug and correct, okay? You can't be smug and incorrect, all right? You have to watch it, man. You have to watch it. Often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or other activities. So guys, do you think this is an innate biological characteristic, or do you think it's possible that environmental factors, such as the presence of stuff that rewards like short attention spans, like, I don't know, TikToks or whatever, the internet broadly, can this be changed? Can this be changed in a person? It can be changed in a person? Okay. Please look up the definition of neurodevelopmental disorder. I'm begging you right now. I don't understand why you guys... You know what I hate about you guys? You're weak. You refuse to believe that you have any role or responsibility in who you are as a person. People love to throw their hands up in the air and go, there's nothing I can do. It's very frustrating. A lot of you people could have much better lives if you just took hold of the reins, you know? A neurodevelopmental disorder is a disability that affects the brain and nervous system. I am looking at it right now. What do I do now with this information now that I'm looking at it? Symptoms. Problems with social integration. Behavioral problems. There's no reason, there's no way this could be influenced by environmental factors. Reduced emotional regulation. Really? Purely genetic? Just a one-to-one? You're born with it or you're not? Okay, you can't essay post, folks. A lot of people are mad right now. You have to dial it back. PTSD is a disorder, for example. It's caused by environment and usually isn't chronic. Disorder doesn't mean inherent to you. I'm pretty sure you're born with PTSD or you're not, Thana. It's a spectrum of nature or nurture. Yeah, like everything else. So why are there people in chat who are so angry at the idea that nature might influence something like this? Guys, that was a joke! PTSD is inheritable? It's not inheritable, genetically. Heritability and genetics aren't the same thing. We've talked about this with IQ. Yeah, inheritable in the sense that trauma from a parent can be passed down behaviorally, not in that the baby's brain has the memory of the... Please! This is the IQ thing. ADHD, or sorry, PTSD isn't a personality disorder. Do you think personality disorders are you're just born with or not? Personality disorders? Bro, your personality develops as you grow up. They think you're saying ADHD and autism aren't real at all. They're actually reactionary on this. They are taking the same position that like TERFs take towards sex. Chat's gonna make me crash out. You're discounting genetic memory. Take your shit back to Lacan or whatever the other one is, okay? Get out of here. Please go on autism yourself. I don't know if I'm the best example you could point to because I met the diagnosis criteria for autism before, and now I genuinely don't know whether or not I would because a lot of the criteria are determined by your ability to integrate socially and process emotions, and over those past 20 years, I've gotten much better at those. Like, I don't know why you'd use me as an example. Like, yeah, I've changed as a person, obviously. It's been 20 years. You're supposed to change. That's masking? No, that's not masking. You change as a person. When you grow up, you change. This is what I mean. You people are insufferable. You're incapable of understanding that you have control over your life. Can you, like, un-ADHD yourself? Yeah, probably. If I lived, like, on a ranch or something, I don't know. Not everyone can. People can mediate symptoms without it being cured. Autism isn't something you cure. Oof. Sorry, I'm forgetting. I'm arguing with like woke 19th century eugenicists. Actually, autism and ADHD are conditions of the brain, the dimple in the skull, corrected, well, perhaps with surgery. You're not getting me. Can we move on? This is so circular. Actually, it's really critical to understanding why RFK Jr. is popular with a group of people, because unless you're in a bubble and you are like genuinely delusional and you're putting your hands on your ears and going, nah, 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 like everyone can see that more and more and more people are getting autistic and ADHD and shit, you know? Like everyone can see that. Nobody believes that it's just diagnosis. It's obviously environmental. My ADHD diagnosis didn't take away my control, it gave it to me. Wait, do you think I'm anti-diagnosing ADHD? It's like being diagnosed with depression or whatever. Like sometimes it's genetically heritable. A lot of the times it's environmental. Being diagnosed with it gives you an understanding of what it is, and then you can go on and like work on it, right? You think when you get diagnosed with depression, you walk out of there and you're like, well, I guess that's me forever. It's because of climate change? Yeah, that's probably true. I was skeptical of this at first, though considering as leftists, we chalk up basically all other differences between humans up to environment for the most part. I don't see why this also can't be influenced by environment. Yeah, the position that I've taken here is so, like, objectively, inarguably correct that most of the people who are arguing are doing so out of projected insecurity. Which is why I'm trying not to, like, go after people specifically. It's just, I kind of know, you know, there's not really much room for disagreement on it. Brains are influenced by the environment. And so are, like, the conditions of the brain. It's a real issue. Can you grow out of Down syndrome too? I mean, you're kind of like misrepresenting my position. Like I might say it's like a physical condition, you know, you can get stronger shoulders and you're like, okay, can you grow back a leg? Not everything. I'll be honest, I don't know as much about Down syndrome. Unlike you, I haven't experienced it, so I don't know much about like the ins and outs, but like the point isn't like actually everything's in your head. The point is that the criteria for these conditions are heavily influenced by the environment. And that's obvious when you look at the conditions. Like, you're not going to gaslight me into thinking that do they measure your gender with a speculum? No, they ask you, you know? It's a big, complex net, and the medicalization of mental illness and neuroatypicality has actually made it a lot harder to deal with these conditions, you know? It actually hurts because then rather than thinking of these as like a sort of a holistic summary of, you know, sort of what's going on in your head and like how you are as a person, you think of it as a diagnosis. It's a condition. You have a condition. And I think that mentality can be really like deleterious. And in case anyone's getting blindsided by this has been my position for 5 years running, okay? And every time this comes up, I say the same thing and people get mad every time. But read Foucault. The medicalization of mental health has been to the detriment of our mental health. People are not getting mentally healthier. Is that why you take Adderall? I take Adderall because it helps me manage the symptoms of my ADHD. Also makes me zoom. What about it? Was that like an attempt at a gotcha? What are you getting me on? Have I said you shouldn't take Adderall? It's also tasty? That's true. Dextroamphetamine be delicious when dipping it in melted chocolate be the vibe. Sorry, that took me a second. You gave people the impression it's purely sociogenic. No, I didn't. That was in your head. You imagined that. It's influenced by environment. That's what I said. I never said exclusively caused by environment. You did, Lamau? No, I didn't. I literally didn't. No, you explained it really poorly. No, I really didn't. I never used incorrect language the entire time we talked about this. You're just hysterical, I'm sorry. I just did. You're not getting me. I've been doing this for too long, man. Maybe some other streamers, you could get them on this. This is like the 20th time I've had this argument. My position's the same every time, and every time afterwards people are like, well, I think you said things that you definitely didn't say. Bro, this is all getting recorded. You think I'm not going to go look back? Well, you're right, because I don't care that much. But I know I said the correct things. Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace, e.g. loses focus, sidetracked, often has trouble organizing tasks and activities, often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long period of time, such as schoolwork or housework. Often loses things necessary for tasks and activities, e.g. school materials, pencils, books, tools, wallets, keys, paperwork, eyeglasses, mobile telephones, is often easily distracted, is often forgetful in daily activities. I think it's really liberating to remember of the sort of arbitrariety of diagnostic criteria, to remember that these are things literally all humans experience. The line we draw past which you say you have ADHD, that's subjective. Different doctors will draw different lines on that. There's no objective way of determining that. All humans sometimes have trouble organizing tasks and activities. All humans are sometimes easily distracted. The extent to which you are or aren't can vary over your life. It can vary based on your environment. It can vary based on the day, who you're with, how you feel that day. It's all a lot more fluid than you might think. And you should be familiar with this kind of language if you've heard me talk about gender or sex, or even race. How a lot of like racial markers aren't just the literal, like how much melanin's in your skin, but a bunch of like social, cultural, political, economic markers that kind of determine what you pass as. It's pretty complicated. So it bothers me a little bit when people take a hardline essentialist perspective where they're like, no, It's your brain shape, your brain, and it's not the same and it can't change. And it's like, come on. I do think that the world we live in today produces more of this than even the world I grew up in. I remember back when I was a kid, there would be summer days where you had nothing to do and you just had to cope with like laying on the couch bored as hell. And that shit sucked. But you had to, because like what were you gonna do, you know? And nowadays that's not the case for like anyone, man. Everyone's got a smartphone, you know? And I didn't enjoy being bored, but I think the world is a lot more accommodating of a short attention span now. You know? People are out there using AR to gamify vacuuming their house, you know? I feel like people just have a shorter attention span. You get me. You can't just shit in the people, though. The social model of disability requires critique of the environment. But that's what I'm doing. I'm not shitting on people. Well, I'm shitting on you guys for being disagreeable. But, like, I'm not shitting on people with ADHD. I have ADHD. And it's not like I'm out there going, like, I am morally obligated to correct my ADHD by going and living on a farm and having no external stimuli for months until I recover and I'm able to stare unblinking motionlessly into the distance without getting bored. Like, why would I do that? I don't want to do that. I'm talking about the environment. I'm not saying like everyone's a moral. I don't give a shit if you're autistic. Hell yeah, man. Do you think it's possible that in the past growing up had things that caused your brain to grow out of autism as it developed as opposed to today? When I was younger, I was a weird kid. I was definitely a weird kid. And I stayed a weird kid like pretty much all the way up until college. And when I started streaming at the very beginning, I was still a weird kid. And I still am now to an extent, but a lot of the social gracelessness has been sandblasted off of my brain from the pressure of being exposed to the scrutiny of literally, at times, millions of people as I record myself day in and day out. You have to be a lot more aware of what you're doing when you're in that position. Yeah, of course I'm still weird. I'm not saying I'm not. But being weird and being autistic aren't the same thing. That's called masking. Don't tell me how I'm feeling, you presumptive shits. Initially, it felt like masking. Now, I'm like this all the time. Why? Because your personality changes. That's what's supposed to do as you grow. I was subjected to a new environment. There was a pressure, and now I'm a different person. That's fine. Isn't that fine? How is that any different from a person just changing due to their environment? An allistic person goes to a new job, like working on an Alaskan fishing vessel, and they become a different person, and it's like, oh, that's masking? No. Masking is a very specific, deliberate effort to hide symptoms of autism or whatever else. And at first it felt like that, and now I'm straight chilling. Do you think that's worse? Do you think I am worse for that? Because I feel great. I've never been so happy. If anything, I feel like the insistence that I have done something wrong is like the deaf people who are mad at babies getting cochlear implants or something. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of like trying to pull the crab back into the bucket. Who said it was wrong? I say the insistence that it's masking comes across as a bit malicious, in my opinion. That comes across a little bit, you know, is masking wrong? The accusation that one is masking when they say they're not, I think there's a little bit to that, you know? This irks me the way TERFs say you can fix gender dysphoria by thinking correct thoughts. Why? It seems to me like you're fighting a war in your own mind. I don't see why. Are you against the idea that you can like change as a person? You literally can. No? Then what's the issue? That sounds like lying to yourself until it becomes second nature, but what do I know, lol? What you're engaging in, and I say this as contemptuously as your mental state can handle, is the language of weakness, and I don't respect you. You are a crab in a bucket. Like, it's like, do you think there's any pride to be had in not growing or changing as a person? This is exactly what I mean, okay? Let's go back to RFK. Yeah, we have delayed on this quite a bit. It's going to be a long-ass stream, but I maintain every point that I made, okay? As someone with a background in psychology, I just want to raise the possibility you were misdiagnosed with autism. You don't know what I was like as a kid, man. I think that I know more about psychology than you. I'm sorry. The idea that it's impossible for people to change and meet or not meet the criteria at different points in their life is not at all controversial in psychology. I don't know why you would suggest that. That's not a controversial position. I promise you, if you go to If you look at in like any research in the diagnostic criteria, or you talk to a psychologist, the idea that a person could like at different stages in their life meet or not meet it, that's literally becoming or not becoming autistic. That's what that means. That's what that means. If you meet it, that's autism. If you don't, that's not autism. If you switch back and forth between those lines, that's you becoming or not becoming. That's what it means. It's pretty arbitrary, isn't it? Vosh did not grow out of his autism slash ADHD. He's in an environment where he thrives. You take him out of this environment and throw him into a 9 to 5, and he's just as screwed as the rest of us. Last comment I'm focusing on, because it's perfectly representative of the thing that I'm describing. You're a crab in a bucket. You're cooked. And I wish nothing but the worst for you. I'm sorry. You are the warden of your own mind prison. It's insane how much I'll read that again, because I read it quickly. Vosh did not grow out of his ADHD slash autism. He's in an environment where he thrives. I am, thank you. You take him out of this environment and throw him into a 9 to 5, and he's just as screwed as the rest of us. There's a vindictive mindset underlying this that is as malicious as the kinds of people who are out there claiming that vaccines cause autism. You're just on the other side of that fence, you know? Like, you're just pulling people into the other bucket, essentially. You're the underlying malice and essentialism is disgusting. I'm not offended by it. I mostly just like, I feel bad for you because you're clearly speaking out of like a projected, upsettedness. But you have more power than you think you do to improve the circumstances in your own life. I promise you do, okay? And that's the difference between me and, I don't know, some RFK Jr. fan. Well, I think there are some other differences too, but like this is one of the differences. I believe in you. I don't think autism is a thing that goes wrong with your brain because the vaccine made it that way. I think autism is, in many cases, a fleeting, sometimes not fleeting, exacerbation of traits all humans have. You've met a subjective diagnosis criteria, but your life and your mind are fluid, and you can change as you grow. And sometimes that change will lead you in different directions, and sometimes it won't. And neither of those are necessarily worse or better than the other. I believe in you. I thought you wanted the worst for this individual. Yeah, but then I stopped being mad, and now I want the best for them. Sorry. It's kind of like the RFK. I mean, this is more productive than anything we're going to see in the goddamn Senate hearing, okay? Please look up the biopsychosocial model. No, I'm familiar with it. I'm aware. Yeah, the idea you have heavy overlaps between all of these categories of influence on the mind. Yeah. Autism is simply never fleeting. Can you grow out of autism? Common misconceptions how to offer support. Neurological development changes with age for everyone, even autistic folks, but it doesn't mean you can grow out of autism. This is wrong. This is categorically wrong. You literally can grow and your personality changes and you no longer meet the diagnostic criteria. I'm sorry. Can we accept that it's possible for these identities to be fluid without then thinking they're invalid? What about this? Maybe because you're all transgenders as well. Maybe I need to frame it that way, okay? You can't scold a person out of being transgender, but a trans femme might later decide they're non-binary. And that doesn't mean them being trans femme was wrong all along. And it doesn't mean that the whole thing was fake. How about that? Vosh says medical science is fake and bad. This is actually an article. Close, though? Is that fine? If there's a trans woman and she's like, I'm a woman, yippee! As women often do. And then later they're like, I've been having some doubts and I think I might just be non-binary. I think I might be more of an NB or something. Does that mean that the non-binary thing, that was the only real thing all along and the woman thing was fake? Was she wrong about the woman thing when she was a woman, but now that they're non-binary, that's both phases are valid? I agree, and it doesn't mean either were fake. Now that you're all the transgenders, you all understand exactly what I mean. Are we fine now? Would you say a trans woman would have then used to be a man? That honestly, that's just an etiquette thing. That I don't know. Ask her. I don't know. She might say that. I know plenty of trans women who are yeah, back when I was a guy. I don't know. But that's not a categorical assertion. It's more of a how cavalier do they want to be about their identity kind of thing, How do we deal with the guilt of not trying hard enough with something like ADHD? Guilt's an unproductive emotion, okay? You should feel an earnest drive to do the best you can. Guilt doesn't, it's not productive in any way, shape, or form. ASD is not an on and off switch. It's an identification meant to help people get the proper support and guidance in place so they thrive and live in their magic. Live in their magic. Vosh telling people they can overcome their autism while being unfathomably autistic about it. I'm not telling people they can overcome it, because that would imply that you're going from a worse state to a better state. I'm saying that your environment influences your personality, and this is a personality type. That'd be like me saying you can overcome being a woman by transitioning to a man. Like, you can transition to a man. I wouldn't really describe it that way. And if you can't change your environment, I'm not telling you to do anything. So autism is a personality type? Are you reading the shit on this? Many autistic folks consider ASD an aspect of their personality rather than something to improve or fix. I'm in the damn bucket with the damn crabs. I want to look into this. Read Foucault. Yeah, I do think this article is wrong, though. You can't say that autism is a diagnosis based on like a set of criteria that can change over time, but then say it's impossible to like change whether or not a person is autistic. You know? Those are mutually exclusive. The article's correct. The article is objectively incorrect. The problem is they're doing the same thing you guys are doing. They're saying that if a person could potentially grow out of or into autism, the implication then is that everyone should grow out of autism. An implication I've never stated. People in chat still think I'm saying that. Chat's making me miss RK Jr. Yeah. But that's just due to the inaccuracy of social definitions. No. That is the definition. You're not pointing to some underlying fact of the mind or whatever. You're just describing a set of criteria that are socially determined. You're not, like, this is what I mean by the medicalization of the mental health. Like, you've convinced yourself that you're using social attributes to get at an increasingly specific diagnosis of an underlying biological truth. But that's not true. You're going at it the wrong way. It's only social diagnoses. Different societies might classify different things as autistic. No society is more correct than the other. There's no underlying fact of the world you're pointing to. It's not like a broken bone or something where there's a fracture or whatever. Let's spend the next 4 years talking about it. You people are such sissies, man. Used to be able to spend all goddamn stream arguing with chat. Nowadays, you go on a 30-minute rampage, and people lose their damn minds. I see what Vosh is saying, but it comes across sounding like my parents taking my diagnosis. See, since you know you're ADHD, you shouldn't forget things and you should know better. I've never said that, and I would never say that. Differences in brains of autistic people. That's oh my god, you realize there are differences in brains for men and women, right? Go on, walk it back. So you can't transition from man to woman? Did you know there are you're a turf, bro. Literally, you can't apply the lessons you've learned in one category to another. You're failing the LSAT. Female brain truther. Oh, didn't you know the way it lights up and the screen looks different? How do you explain severely autistic people? Easily? What do you mean? What have I said that's countered by... Do you think I've said all autistic people can easily shift in and out of being autistic? What do you think I'm saying? Do you have any scientific evidence of people being able to stop being autistic? Yeah, people who will meet diagnostic criteria for autism when they're younger, and then when they get older, they don't anymore. That's literally them stopping being autistic. That's what that means. That's not scientific evidence. That is literally what that means. Autism doesn't mean anything besides meeting the diagnostic criteria. If you meet it and then you stop meeting it, that is you no longer being... Wasn't really clear what you were saying. It was, you're just struggling a little bit, but that's okay. That's why we do these for 40 minutes every time, so everyone can catch up. Your understanding of transness is so low-res and bad faith it reflects in your general neurology. How can you, of the audacity, to accuse me of having a bad understanding of transness after all the insufferable shit I've had to deal with? Get out of here. Get out of here. I'm actually the single best advocate for trans people on Earth, don't you know? Are you saying that you can grow into a version of autism/ADHD which is more manageable as an adult? The definition of autism is when you meet a certain number of subjective diagnostic criteria. If later in life you don't meet that criteria, you are medically no longer autistic. An autism diagnosis only refers to the diagnosis. It doesn't refer to some underlying dot in your brain. There are other tests for diagnosis? Yeah? And they're all like that. None of them are like calipers. You can have different tests, sure, and what if you don't pass those tests anymore? This is not true. This is the definition of ASD, not autism. Shut it. What are you... As soon as chat said they were born with personality disorders, they lost all credibility. I just don't even know. Vosh, where are you getting this definition? Well, we're looking at diagnosing ADHD right now. How do you diagnose ADHD? That's what it means to diagnose ADHD. I genuinely don't understand. Okay, for people, can somebody explain to me what they think autism is, if not the sum of diagnostic criteria? What underlying fact do you think is being pointed to? Why are you conflating ADHD and autism? I'm not. They're two different things. That's not conflating. That's not what the word conflating means. You don't know what the word conflating means. You have a developmental disorder that prevents you from understanding what the word conflating means. So many people are seething at Vosh because they think autism is their main personality trait. It's learned helplessness. They don't like the way their life is going, and they resent the idea that there's any possibility whatsoever that they could take ownership over how they handle the circumstances in their life. I've seen it a million times. It's been the main reason why people in chat get mad at me for 5 years. Because I don't have a failure mindset, and some people do. Clean your rooms. So far, you've pointed to Foucault and some people changing. Do you have any studies or medical research you've read that makes you... Okay, trans magical girl. Since you're so interested, okay? Let's do this back and forth right now, okay? What is autism if not a diagnosis based on meeting certain criteria? Like, here's another example. A broken bone is a broken bone whether or not it's diagnostically assessed. You don't need to go to a doctor to check on that one. If you see a bone that's been split in two pieces, there's an objective criteria. If you want, you could get into the molecules. Oh, well, what about a hairline fracture? Is that a break? And I acknowledge there is actually a lot of ambiguity there. All definitions are fuzzy. But, you know, there's an objective marker. With autism, what is being pointed to exactly, if not a set of diagnoses? What besides the criteria? I'm asking you specifically. Then why does science disagree with you? It doesn't. It doesn't. You just aren't familiar with it. Developmental delays are measurable. What does that have to do with what I've said? Do you believe someone can grow out of Down syndrome then? Down syndrome is literally caused by an extra chromosome. It's nothing to do. You're just in your head, you're like, so what Vosh is saying is everything's fake and all mental stuff is willpower. It's not what I'm saying. I'm asking a specific and pointed question. Trans Magical Girl has an answer. I'm not interested in arguing the diagnoses. Okay, then I have nothing to say to you. Yeah, why do you think they call it autism spectrum disorder? There's a spectrum of human behavior and character traits. Lame? Of course it's lame, because people are just mad. So lupus is a social... So Vosh thinks the Black Plague is a social construct, does he? I'm back in the good old days. Would you consider this a productive discussion about mental health? Yes. Well, you think just because things are like slightly heated that it's bad? What happened to you people? A culture of weakness. Come on, autism is the common neurodevelopmental cause of the psychiatric condition that results in the diagnosis of ASD. Okay, then how do you point to autism if not the diagnostic criteria? What other way is there? When you're looking at a broken bone, you're looking at the broken bone itself. You guys are literally describing autism as though it's a magical characteristic, unalterable in your mind. Oh, guys, even though the only way we can assess its existence is through the diagnoses and people's diagnostic responses can change over time, that doesn't mean the underlying magical factor in your brain hasn't changed or has changed. Like, you're literally arguing magic. It's unscientific. Like, in your brain, there's a soul. There's a spiritual node, and that node makes you autistic. No matter what changes, even if your personality shifts over time, that's you. You're autistic. Now, the only way we know if that soul is there is by using diagnostic criteria. Now, the diagnostic criteria might give us different answers or not, but once it says you have it, you always have it, because in the future, any changes to the diagnostic criteria answers might just mean, I don't know, the spiritual node has gone quiet. Like, I don't think you guys understand. You're talking about autism the way people like RFK Jr. do. An innate characteristic of the brain, a functional flaw created by, in a way that like permanently impairs you. It's an anti-sociological way of thinking about things. Anti-medical, anti-scientific. Why does ADHD medication work then? What do you think what does that have to do? Because the ADHD... What? Why wouldn't it? I'm sorry, anti-depression medication can help with depression. Are you suggesting then depression must be an innate, unchanging characteristic? Let's think before you say things. You think you can't take medication to address characteristics of the mind that are influenceable by environment? Like it's impossible to get better if you're depressed or anxious? Depression can't just be grown out of, though. I don't know if you're speaking from personal experience, but I promise you, to anyone in chat struggling with depression, it actually can get better. You actually can no longer be depressed. And if the depression alleviates as you get older, you can, grow out of it. Like, that's absolutely possible. In fact, that happens to most humans because a lot of people get depressed when they're like teenagers. Like, all teenagers. What are you talking about? Dr. Lita, you like 16? You're like, there's no way this torment will ever end. If more people get an x-ray, more people are diagnosed, and it seems like more bones are broken. Are you suggesting that broken bones can't be environmentally caused? People drag racing, hitting everyone on the sidewalks, and you're like, okay, yeah, well, the increase in broken bones across the city are just caused by like an increase in people getting x-rays for broken bones, obviously. What are you talking about? Why are you arguing when you got nothing to say? Autism is defined as not being able to stop being autistic. It's not. You're just making that up. I don't know why you're making it up. I don't know how you benefit from making that up. In the definition of autism is that it's permanent and can't change. You can find that in the DSM-5. I hate when Vosh reverts back to his neckbeard soy self like this. I do like being reminded sometimes that even though I objectively had like a neckbeard soy vibe back in like 2020 or whatever, that a lot of the time when people called me that, it was just because they didn't like it when I called them out on being wrong. Like, a lot of people just only like me when I'm presenting the news to them or giving them analyses they already agree with, but the moment I'm presenting some information they don't like intuitively vibe with, they get really weird and defensive and aggressive. Notice how a lot of the people in chat who disagree with me aren't just like disagreeing with me, they're just like attacking me or making really weird assertions about me. It's kind of crazy. Vosh, how much of this is brain chemistry? All of it is. Your brain chemistry can be affected by environmental factors. If you watch a horror movie, your brain chemistry will be changed by the spook in your brain. That's how it is. That's why this stuff is complicated. It's all like really, really, really intertwined. Your brain is the chemistry. There is no brain chemistry. The brain is the chemistry. That's the brain. Autism is socially described. We can't define it because it's complex and we haven't identified the specific genes that cause it. Oh my God. But it's a real genetic disability. There are genetic inheritable, there are genetic traits that make people more prone to depression. That doesn't mean depression isn't environmentally influenced, and B, can't be like changed or altered. Come on, apply your thinking to specific subjects we haven't gone over. Come on, it's not enough to know a thing about one thing. You have to know the thing about the one thing and then apply it to the other things. That's what analysis is. Otherwise, you're just regurgitating information you have. You have to think about how these things apply broadly. If you have ADHD but do something to reduce the environmental effects that make it worse, you still have ADHD? Not necessarily. For instance, you might change your environment and over time your personality changes, and then you might not meet the diagnostic criteria anymore, and then you literally don't have ADHD anymore. That's how that works. Why is this like bad to you? Like, why? I don't understand the reflexive defensiveness or whatever. Presumably people who think that I'm moralizing it in some fashion, which I have not once in this entire conversation. At no point have I said that you should or ought to be one or the other. There's no moral claim one can make that being autistic is worse than being autistic or having ADHD is worse than not having ADHD. Certainly there's a degree of social incompatibility, but if we got rid of all of socially incompatible people, we wouldn't have artists. I don't know. You're just wrong and that's okay. You can't be smug and wrong. You have to choose. I'm not wrong. You're shadowboxing a set of positions that I've already like addressed or debunked. Vosh is trying to walk it back. What have I walked back? I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know what makes you guys like this. Well, I do. Again, I keep saying that it's the learned helplessness, but it does bother me, you know? It's the autism. No. It's learned helplessness. It's not just the autism. And I think this is why RFK Jr. is getting appointed, man. That's why. Hey, Vosh, I spent years in the behavioral health world. You're absolutely correct. I love reading out messages that agree with me after, as a nice reprieve from reading out messages that disagree with me. Could environmental changes result in a change in gender identity? Yeah, of course. And I've said that for years now. Is that bad? No, that's life. Environmental changes or environmental factors are a huge part of why I'm cisgender. Do you think if I was born out there in the forest, never met another man, never met another human, raised by wolves or whatever, that I would have an interest in heritage menswear, of styling my hair the way I do, or living the way I do, or talking the way that I do? No. The fact that I'm cisgender is environmentally ordained. Trans people likewise, to an extent. Obviously, there's probably a genetic predisposition to it, but yeah. You're trying to hit me. I'm floating like a butterfly. Vosh, there are physical differences in trans brains. Trans people don't change. I need you to understand, Brian does it, that you're a reactionary on this. Like, your position on this is a reactionary one. You're basically doing the like, well, we don't know why gay people are the way they are, but they're just like that and they were born that way. This is like 1990s progressivism. I don't say that shit. Environmental factors can make people gay or straight. I don't care. Sure. Did you know there are differences on average between gay people and straight people? Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that a lot of this is socially ordained. Your disgust with or interest in a given gender, presentation, whatever, heavily influenced by your environment, you know? Your brain doesn't change, but your understanding of things does. Well, your brain does change too over time, so, you know. Just to clarify, are you saying you can overcome the symptoms of autism or overcome autism itself? There's no difference. Autism is the social criteria for it. There's no underlying fact of the world that it's pointing to. That's what it is. There's no objective definition of autism. It varies diagnosis to diagnosis, doctor to doctor. You're wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that the diagnostic criteria for it is socially determined and that it's arbitrary, just like all other social constructs. That's literally, I'm sorry. They're pinning my hands to the Christ. They're giving me the stigmata. I'm sorry, you're stabbing me in the ribs, but you know, in 3 days I'm gonna come back and you're gonna regret it when I stream again. We have this conversation again. If you're diagnosed as not having autism, then you never had autism. You were misdiagnosed. You don't become autistic. No, there is an underlying fact of the world. There's an objective spirit in your brain. We know the brain changes, but the soul of autism is either in your brain or isn't. It's crazy. It's actually like medieval logic. It makes no sense if you just think about it for a second. Vosh, I was misdiagnosed with autism. Does that mean I stopped being autistic? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe the diagnosis was valid then and not now. Maybe the diagnosis wasn't really valid then. There's no objective marker to determine that. It's kind of just like an intersubjective agreement for the validity of the diagnosis. You know? Me when I'm diagnosed with gay. They were on the money with that one. You're just incorrect on this one. While environmental factors are important, the idea that every aspect of one's behavior or identity is environmentally determined is an extreme oversimplification. But I didn't say that. I just said that environmental factors help determine it. That's like a strong determining factor. I didn't say it was entirely determined by the environment. I never said there aren't genetic components. In fact, I think I've said that like 5. Okay, this is what I mean with you guys. Mr. DNA. So you seem to have not heard the past like 20 times I've said that there are genetic influences. And it looks like you were in chat 11 minutes ago. Oh, you've been here for a while. So, Mr. DNA, smart guy, all that fancy book learning didn't help you with listening to the shit I say, did it? It's a huge amount of this is literally just people not listening and getting mad at me. I don't understand. Why does Google say autism isn't curable? Because for something to be curable, you could take something that would fix it. But I don't think autism is worth fixing or curing, and you don't take anything to cure or fix it. What are you talking about? Also, you're deferring to Google AI on this one? Depression is curable? Have you ever been given a drug by a doctor and the doctor said this will cure your depression? Depression is treatable. The reason it's treatable is because we all acknowledge that depression is a bad thing, and therefore it should be mitigated. You could arguably treat autism or ADHD, but you know what the problem with that is? Autism and ADHD aren't bad. Depression's bad. Autism and ADHD aren't bad. So treating it implies, in a normative sense, that you're correcting for a bad thing. But I'm not a genesis like you guys, where you think the soul of autism like exists undying in your mind from birth to death, no matter what the criteria says. This is some autism speak shit. That's what I mean. The idea that you can medicalize this shit to the extent that you do, that's their argument. Like, they're making the same claims. They're just approaching it from the different normative framework. You're both coming at it from a skull-shape medical essentialist perspective. You're buying into their language, you know? Dog, you're medicalizing it. I can't help you with your cognitive processing problems. I don't know what I'm anti-medicalizing it. I'm demedicalizing it. I'm socializing it. which you'd think we'd be doing more of in this channel. Y'all MF's never heard of the term holistic approach? I'm glad we're talking about this. It's way more important than the meeting. What are you going to learn from the meeting, you know? Haha, funny voice. Oh, we'll get there. Discord chat crying right now? Wonder why the Discord stream chat of all groups would be particularly disposed towards being upset with me over this one. I wonder what's been selected for there. Hey, speaking of environmental factors that increase the prominence of neurodevelopmental disorders, if autism could be found with a scan, would that change your opinion? No. Depression could be found with a scan. Your brain chemistry is altered by seeing a scary movie, man. Your brain chemistry is altered by going on a roller coaster. Your brain chemistry is altered when you see a girl's thong poking over her pants. You can detect the mental state with a scan in the brain. What if it was diagnosable at conception? You mean like if there was a genome or something? Well, if they made the definition of autism that genome or whatever, then yeah, that would be like more like Down syndrome, and that it's just an innate like genetic marker that can be like directly, objectively identified. But they're never gonna, because that's not what autism is. That's not what ADHD is either. But that's a totally different thing. And at that point, then it would be a totally different, I mean, that would be like a different thing, you know? Wouldn't be a spectrum if that was the case. The Nazis literally tried to get the autism gene. Yeah, you know? Fascist groups are really obsessed with the idea that different states of being, different types of people can be boiled down to like innate genetic differences. I wonder, but if you read Foucault, maybe you could read a little bit on how the liberal obsession with medicalizing neural states has been weaponized by dictatorships and by the Nazis specifically, because having a like differentiation marker to point to as an objective description of why people are different is really useful if you want to determine what an outgroup is, which is why liberal racial science got really popular after the 17th century, because it was no longer enough to gesture at spiritual difference. Instead, people wanted to start to describe racial differences as being innately baked into the genetic code, which is anti-scientific, because as it turns out, there's more genetic variation within racial groups than there is on average between them. But no. Let's get mad at me for saying that the autism spirit's not a real thing in your brain. Oh my God. Okay, that was satisfying. Thank you. That was like a bit of catharsis there there we go. Read Foucault. That was very satisfying. Okay, all right. So you build up to that, but you know, we worked for it. And now we're here. All right, so anyway, I guess my point is that we need to ban smartphones, and that way less people will be autistic.